I think we can get started, and then as people kind of roll in from the break here. So good morning, everyone. What a wonderful plenary, right? That was really wonderful. So welcome. This is our panel on the future of learning, creative pathways for the new generation. So I'm Shayla James. Nice to meet you all. And I'm a musician, teaching artist, creative entrepreneur, researcher, and the director of the San Diego Creative Youth Development Network here. And I am so honored to guide today's conversation with our panelists, some that I just met outside in the courtyard here. So good to meet you. We're here to explore a vital question. How is learning evolving, and how can creativity guide the way forward? So for youth through age 26 and even adult learners, young people today are navigating a lot. They're navigating mental health pressures, academic demands, and challenges like housing and food insecurity. And at the same time, arts-based programs are offering tools for resilience, expression, and growth, and like so much more that we're going to talk about today on our panel. So I'm delighted to be joined by our panelists here, and they all bring unique perspectives to the conversation. So I'll just start here to the left of me. We've got Rich Magale, Executive Director of Dreams Ducats, focused on expanding creative opportunities for youth and community. And then we have Erin Tanner, nice to meet you, business coach, Journeys Map Service consultant, and founder of Love Yours Consulting. And then we have Dr. Nicole Assisi, global education consultant, award-winning superintendent and CEO, and former advisor to the U.S. Secretary of Education. So to get us started here with a warm-up question, let's get to know a little bit more about you. So each of you works with learners in different contexts, and so could you just briefly share with us how you got into this work and how you have been seeing learning evolve through your own journey?
Yeah, I can start.
Okay.
Right on. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Our keynote really hit the nail on the head for me. I got into this work just by acting on that core soul level tension that I was feeling. So I lived another life in corporate, white collar, doing it how we're told to do it. And I found myself in a post-COVID era, particularly, really just called into this work. I was a kid who benefited from just great programming as a kid. I'm a native San Diegan, so this is my hometown. So just feeling that there was just opportunity, space, and room for me to redirect my gifts, for the benefit of young people. I was a young person who benefited. Was really just how I came into this work in K-12 education and creative economic development. So,
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Erin?
Good morning, everyone. Erin Tanner. With entrepreneurship, oftentimes we are our clients in a past life, and so that's really how I ended up founding Love Yours. I work primarily with 19 to 28-year-olds in that defining decade of their lives where there's big questions of kind of who am I? What are my core values away from my family? When they start off into those college years and start their professional lives, and then what I really saw through mentorship when I was a director of a foundation before founding Love Yours was that there was a lot of the same questions coming up or challenges that they were all facing, which, what do I want to do? How do I want to do that? Who do I want to do that with? And so through my own journey of finding my confidence through clarifying those really big questions, those more beautiful questions in life, I exited that role as the director and then started Love Yours, and now primarily work with college students, like I said, either on campuses or through organizations and partnering with nonprofits and such. So I think that is one of to answer that second part of your question, the thing that I've seen evolve in learning is that students are staying closer to what I call home or themselves, and not getting so far away to travel back later in life. Of that midlife crisis thing is they're asking those questions sooner and seeing like, hey, maybe those former generations or our parents, our grandparents didn't like that or had this like moment later, and so they're going, how can I make sure that who I am and what I do connect and there's alignment there sooner.
Great. I got into this work. My family immigrated to the United States when should I lean forward? I'll lean in. Oh, I keep cutting. I'll trade with you.
Let's do it.
If not, I can use my teacher voice. I immigrated to this country when I was 11 years old. And even at that point, it was incredibly hard to find legal ways to permanently stay in this country. And I actually landed in education as a possible pathway to get my green card, to make this country my home. And it was really serendipitous, right? Because I don't know that I would have chosen education. I thought I should be in corporate America or, make money. But education chose me in that way, right? It became this pathway to become a citizen, though it took me, nearly 25 years to finally get to that point, even working in education. And what I get to do now on that road, I was a teacher in San Diego Unified. I was a teacher at High Tech High. I led various schools. I ended up being a superintendent with this mission and purpose to make schools great places for both kids and adults. And in that work, you really only get to make it great for the kids and the adults in your building. And that's what called to me to do consulting work. I'm incredibly lucky. I get to travel. We support a school in Bali. We work with the Green School in Bali, a school that really anchors in arts and architecture in terms of how it engages students in learning. We work with schools in Singapore, schools in California. Here in San Diego, we work with Cajon Valley. It's just a really beautiful work to figure out how do we get to this place where schools are great places for kids and adults. And I really think that creativity and the arts and this like self-expression has to be a huge part of that. So I think at the heart of education is my deep belief that there needs to be self-expression. There needs to be a human-centeredness and a relational piece, but there also has to be purpose. And that purpose is going to look different to all of us. But if we get that right in education, I think we'll be in a really great place. And that's what keeps me in education.
Thank you all for sharing pieces of your journey. And as you were all speaking, I was thinking of home, of our physical home, our being home to youth, being guiders, supporters of how they want to navigate. And I was also thinking about how our journeys evolve over time, right? That it's never stagnant, it's always evolving. And seeing that happen with our youth too is like, I just find that's like such a beneficial thing, right? Or a reciprocal thing is what I want to say, of seeing how we can all evolve over time through our journeys. So I wanted to speak a bit more about the current challenges that our youth are facing and our learners, adults as well. And that is, so young people are navigating enormous pressures. As I said, mental health, academic stress, housing and food insecurity. And how are you seeing these challenges show up in your work?
I mean, I can start with that. Right now, the third leading cause of death for young people is suicide. I think the academic pressure and this sort of hamster wheel that we've gotten ourselves in, right? And our keynote mentioned this, is that like, instead of stopping, we're doing more and more and more. And to what end? To what end? Like, is that really what we want for young people? And so I think that is right now the biggest challenge that we're facing, is that young people are pushing themselves to a point where they are not well. And at the end of it all, they go to an IV or they go to a UC, but they're not finding jobs. And so they are being submitted to these wild amounts of pressure only at the end to then not have anything. And so I love, Erin, like the work that you do with helping kids kind of find their purpose, or young people find their purpose, because I think if we are rooted in purpose, if we feel like there's a reason that we're on this earth and there's a reason why we are here, then that hopelessness goes away, right? And the Surgeon General is talking about it all the time. Loneliness, hopelessness, like that is the like pandemic of our time. That is the like greatest challenge of our time. And so how do we shift that through education? How do we shift that through art? I feel like that is the biggest challenge that, like, as a nation, as a community of creative people, as a community of educators and parents, that we need to figure out.
Yeah, I'll add, working, so Dreams and Ducats, we work with young people primarily 16 to 24. A lot of our programming is geared particularly for high school students right now. And to the point, Nicole, like you're mentioning, there is this broad sense among young people where they're feeling alone. They're feeling fragmented, from their peers. They're feeling fragmented and disconnected from really, I think, what is the social pressures and themes, right? They don't feel, in our work that I've observed, there's a sense that they just don't connect with the things that they're being presented during the times that they're spending most among their peers at school. So for what I'm observing and what I think is the challenge is that these young people today are having a harder time finding a level of self-worth because they don't feel like they have anything to own, to claim. And I think that as we are thinking about the future of learning, how are we giving young people a chance to claim and create something that's theirs, that they feel authentically connected to, that is reflective of who they are at that moment, rather than being sort of funneled into the hamster wheel, right? Because I think in today's world it's so hyper exposed. Things are just it's a fire hose. Like, we're drinking out of a fire hose, and I think young people are also drinking out of a fire hose. I think it's trying to help encourage them to lean into the things that that feel natural and authentic for them, and just trying to come up with creative ways for that.
I often think of it as an invisible backpack that all of these students, or that we're all carrying, and it's not so much of an if they are experiencing these things, it's which ones are you experiencing. And so I encourage the folks that I get to do life with, as I say, to curate their spaces or their lives, and in the way of, if we're a sum of the things that we are always taking in, or the people that we're around, curate that. Make sure that the voices, starting with your own, is what is that? What is my paradigm? Whose voice am I hearing, and what does that voice telling me? And then those people that you're around, so that your community is always going to say, if you're around me long enough, you'll hear me say community is like the biggest thing for me. And then, those other parts of life that you are consuming. So curate your space.
Curating space, honoring youth voice, really honoring and paying attention to when they're undergoing such tremendous stress, right? Yes, there are things that you might want to do, but how do we balance that, right? It's a balance, and how do we honor ourselves as human beings, that we can't do everything and it's impossible. Thank you all. And so you started to get more into this, but in what ways are arts-based programs, since we have artists and creatives in the room, what ways are arts-based programs helping students cope with these challenges?
I can take that one. Dreams and Ducats, our flagship programming is around creative strategy, brand strategy, entrepreneurship. We work a lot with schools and school districts on helping them build and develop creative business and entrepreneurship pathways as part of CTE and work-based learning. What I'm noticing is that young people, in light and in lieu of these challenges, they're wide awake about it. They see it, they observe it in their peers. They're seeing the same headlines as we do. They actually want to do something about it. Through the work over at Helix High School. So we work really close with Helix High School. We work with our cohorts at the beginning of the year to really understand just kind of what are the things that they're observing among their peers, in their community, in the world, and using that as a basis for a project, a capstone entrepreneurship project where they actually create a brand and a real business. It's amazing. These young people say, hey, I have friends who are really going through it. I got friends who contemplate suicide. I got friends that live down in IB and down by the border, and water's an issue, the environment's an issue, XYZ. And I'm observing and seeing that young people, they care more about the world and the things in closest proximity to them and want to do something about it. And I think that is really powerful. I think it's understated. I don't think enough credit is given to young people who want to solve actually now, And there's so many great orgs represented in the room. And there's so many great young people who are advocating and, actually moving on things. And so for me, that's what I feel like, is a breath of fresh air, really a breath of fresh air. Seeing young people really just deciding to do something about the thing.
And it'd be so great, if we had more of that in all spaces, right? Because you guys touch the students that you touch, but what if we had this arts revolution, this education revolution, where every learning space had this opportunity for self-expression, had opportunity to find your purpose, had opportunity to be really human-centered. I'm feeling hopeful. There's a lot of conversations lately around neuroaesthetics that some people in the room might know a lot more even than I've started to learn. I see some people nodding, right? But this idea of neuroaesthetics is really that arts, the aesthetics, they change our neurology. They change our hormones. They reduce these positive feelings. And so how can we lean into this, and how encouraging that the scientific community is taking note of that, right? Because it's not just us who love arts and us who know children going hey, this is important. It's actual brain science saying, you know what, your brain on art does a lot better. Your brain on, and if you haven't read that book, it's a great book. I'm forgetting right now the two authors' names, but Your Brain on Art is a phenomenal book that really talks about neuroaesthetics and what's happening. And so I'm feeling hopeful that people are starting to shift, right? And I can't keep saying it, at the heart of education needs to be this piece of purpose, needs to be this human-centeredness, this connection, and this opportunity for self-expression. Young people want to express themselves. And when people get all anxious saying AI is taking over, it's no, because at the end, this is the real work, right? It doesn't mean that AI can't be powerful. It doesn't mean that AI isn't making music. But come on, there's something great about being at a concert and being front row, or sitting with an artist, meeting somebody. Let's lean into the ways that AI can make the work better. But at the end of it, it's purpose, it's self-expression, it's human connection. So I'm feeling hopeful.
I think I'll piggyback some things that you were saying about this generation, the younger generation. I work a lot with values and defining one's values. The top 3 for Gen Z right now are self-care, or eudaimonia. I think it's a Greek word, but that really translating into self-care. Second is voice, and the third is non-civi, which is helping people. And so, but then we have the other side of that, which from the hiring managers are really about achievement and just different motivators. Are you ready to go and earn a lot of money and achieve here? And so that's a very drastic difference between, I want to work here, but what do you value? And that's not the same conversation going on. And so art-based programs and spaces really provide, one, the community and the space for you to express yourself. Two, the ability to make mistakes and it be a safe environment too. Not only is it safe, but it's also encouraged and like it can be changed into a positive. And then the third is also to have the opportunity that the art space programs or spaces give to rehearse what I like to call, it's not my word, but identity capital. So it's owning your voice, your opinion on things, and then it's more like that investment in who you are and that opportunity to really like, hey, I said this is what I believe, and how did that play out? And so it's not a like do and then, oh gosh, what happened? But yeah, it provides that space to step into yourself or themselves.
Yeah, thank you all for that variety of answers to that question, from youth, seeing what's going on in the world, what's affecting them, wanting to make changes. Brain on Art, great book. Such a great book. And then also allowing youth to have the space to experiment, right? That like, it's okay. It's a safe space to try out who you are really around other people. It's made me think too about the ways to case make in our work. Unfortunately, like I think in this room, everyone's like, yes, art, we know like the value of it. But there are all these ways that we can describe how art helps us, right? As humans in this world. So yeah, thank you for sharing all those ways. So, again, y'all are just kind of ahead of me in these questions. It's great. So we're getting to now the creative approaches, like practices that we use day to day with our learners within these programs or within your work. And so, what are some innovative practices or programs that you've seen that integrate creativity into education in meaningful ways?
Well, I'll speak to what I feel like is a really cool thing happening. The overlaying of art, culture, creativity into work-based learning and career education. Career education is the future of learning. I don't think Paul Revere's like answering the mail as much anymore for young people, right? And I think that as we think about a 21st century world that goes beyond, our lifetime, for the folks in this room, like seeing how art, culture, community, creativity is becoming more of a sticking point for designing pathways. I'll speak just from the work that we're doing, particularly with creative business and entrepreneurship. I think that when we have an opportunity to engage young people at a level that feels relevant and feels fresh for them, and tying it to career education, work-based learning, a preparedness for life and success beyond academics, it helps move their feet. I think young people talk with their feet. They're gonna pull up to your program. They're gonna pull up after school to your spot. If they are feeling connected to the thing beyond just what it means in terms of an outcome, like, oh, this just means I'm gonna get a job or I'm gonna get this stipend. It just means it goes deeper when it can be connected to something that is true about their core or something that they care about, getting back to that, like we were saying. But I think from a practice standpoint, that's really cool. Because, pathways right now, I mean, it's there's no lack of a biotech pathway in schools that do have career ed. And I realize not every school has career education in CTE. I think every school should. I think there should be CTE and work-based learning in every single school in this country. But it's really, really cool just to see that when it comes to a biotech pathway, when it comes to a med pathway, a computer science pathway, an advanced manufacturing pathway, the 5 priority sector pathways, there's an curiosity about how do we tie community, culture, and creativity to the thing to make it, a bit more sticky, for young people. And I think that is beautiful. I think business and entrepreneurship, there's a particular opportunity there in terms of just practice and program design, because that is what I think we are all in the business of like small business ecosystems, creative entrepreneurship, and young people, like, they're pretty tapped in. They know the cool stuff. It's been like that for generations. Like youth culture really sets the tone and the trend. They'll define what's cool, and if we can find a way to connect that to career education and preparing them, to design a life and to live well, I think that's like really a cool thing just happening, and it's not happening everywhere, but it's happening. So I think that's a pretty innovative thing.
I've been waiting all week for this question. But really to give Rich and what he does, I had the opportunity to experience not only a space that he is a part of, but also an event that he puts on, the Guild House. When I work with my students, I encourage them to connect who they are, what they do, and those they do it with, and that creates a life and a career that they love. There's a lot of, it's holistic, right? And when I came to, what is that place called? That coffee shop?
Future is color.
Yeah, that thing, Future is color. It was a space that I was like, do I belong here? I mean, I absolutely did. I felt welcomed for sure. But there's so much creativity in that space, and there was so many people that you could have the best conversations with, and young people showing up and feeling like they belong there. You could just feel it. And then being a part of this Guild House event that he put on, I loved the end the most, where he opened it up to who in this space has capacity to support what the other people's needs in the rooms are. So whether that was, hey, and I need an attorney, or I had a question about law, or things like that those are the types of spaces. There wasn't a, how did you put it? No gatekeeping. And so that is where I would drive the students that I work with, or the people that I get to do life with, towards those. Find those people that are going to be your mentors, your advocates, your supporters, even when you're not in the room, because we all are deserving of those types of relationships.
I really love the question, and I feel like both of you have added like so much richness to it that I think I just want to like zoom out, and if it's helpful, provide a little context of what I'm seeing in education, sort of from a macro level of like what are some changes in education. I think one is what we're seeing both nationally and internationally in our work is that education is becoming more modularized, right? Whether that's like the career work that you're talking about, or just in general, people are thinking about mastery-based learning and about modular learning. With that, what that looks like in K-12 is a shift away from seat time. So no longer like you got to be here for this many hours in order to get credit. There is this like, how do you break up the day? How do you break up the work? In higher ed, it's taking a different approach, which I actually think is interesting, and it's trickling down to K-12. It's this idea of moving away from from terminal degrees. So we see a decrease in the number of people getting bachelor's degrees and an increase in the number of people that are getting certificates or specific skill-based assessments. So this modularization in education, I think, is really interesting. And it's happening in both higher ed and in K-12. The other thing that I think is interesting, and it relates to what you were both saying, is that we're seeing both in higher ed and K-12 an increase in interdisciplinary learning, meaning that gone are the days where like, this is biology 101, and now it's about like the big concepts, like thinking like a scientist, right? Like Nancy Kaplan from the University of Southern California did a lot of that research. How do you think like an architect? Think like a scientist. And it's moving outside of your own discipline in order to really dig deep into that. And another thing is we're moving away from, recently there was an article that looked at how students rank the top universities in the world. And in this very North American, Eurocentric way, I was like, oh yes, let's see the Harvards and the Stanfords and all the schools. And yes, they were on the list. But if you look at the top 5, one of the top 5 was a university in Calcutta. One of the top 10 was a university in Bangalore. Like universities, top business schools no longer just exist in this country. And students are looking outside of just studying in their own backyard, right? Like they have access to getting the best learning anywhere in the world. And so we're seeing students reach out in very purposeful ways to find what they need for the task that they want to learn, for the skill that they want to learn. And it really links full circle back to this idea of like modular learning. I don't need all this stuff. I want the things that like matter to me. You're talking about like the people that you do life with. I like that. I'm going to use that from now on. But like in the people that you do life with, right? Like what's that skill that you need to learn? You don't have to have 4 years of all the things that you don't want to know in order to get that specific skill. And so it's a really interesting shift and really exciting to see.
That is exciting, and thank you for that perspective too. Modular learning and really being able to like practice, right? Practice and have opportunity to do the things that you're really interested in beyond the reading, like research and reading about what you want to do is also great, right? But like actually getting into the practice and entrepreneurship, like you said, like, they're thinking with their feet, So thank you. And so, when then we talk about like, how can we make these opportunities more accessible, right? And equitable for youth and learners. And so, what barriers do you see and how can we work collectively, in community care to ensure that more equitable opportunities for youth and young adults exist or that they're able to access those spaces? Go for it.
I don't want to overuse the word collaborating. I think comes down to asking. Oh, you got it. Asking. We're doing this. Who else could need this? Who hasn't seen this? Who needs to see it? And I think sometimes in my 20 years in nonprofit, or 25, I don't know how to date myself. It seems sometimes I'm just shocked at how siloed it gets and how one organization can be doing something for all these years and then not know that there's a similar organization doing the same work, but they're not collaborating, or their challenge, one person's challenge is not the other person's, and it's like, well, we want to reach all these folks, and it's like, well, they're doing it. Have you all talked to each other? Do you all know each other? Something I saw an example of this that it was worked was a group or a nonprofit that was focused on homeless or eradicating it, and they partnered with folks that would take care of like the water or say it again. Like our creeks and things like that, like wetlands. I don't know what to call them. Okay, what is that word? Thank you. Stuff like that. And they partnered together because the people that they served were in those lands, in those. Sorry, I totally butchered how to say that correctly. But what they were noticed is that, well, while you're out there testing the waters and figuring these things out, you're talking to the folks, and we like to keep track of our folks and where they're at and how we can help them. And so it was just a spreading of how can we make this work? So again, like thinking of it, who needs to see this? How could we do a better job? Like who do we just need to talk to solve this problem?
Absolutely. Who do we need to talk to and how do we access information? I feel like so often access to quality arts, access to quality education is like a lack of understanding to like how to navigate the funding space. And I think we've got some brilliant foundations in San Diego that are helping to create access. I know we've got the Privacy Foundation in the house, and they're doing a beautiful work around that. But there's also, people keep talking about there is no money for the arts, and it is categorically inaccurate because right now California has over $7 billion allocated for arts, but people aren't accessing it. And I think we need to stop telling the story of there's no arts funding. There is, but we don't have the skills yet, and we're not sharing the skills on how to access that funding. Community schools, Prop 98. $4.1 billion of funds that are not being allocated in those ways. Prop 29 funded $3 billion for the arts. Schools aren't applying for them. They're overwhelmed. They've got, I used to be in the classroom. I used to be a superintendent. I understand it's really hard to be in schools, but that's why we as like a community need to step up and say, hey, school, I know you need to write this silly 20-page report on how you're going to use arts. And I understand that you probably didn't go to school to figure out how to like integrate the arts. You went to school for a lot of things like math, science, but maybe you don't know how to do the arts. Let me help you as a creative person in your community, as a nonprofit. Let me step up and fill out that report so that you can tap into those $3 billion of funds. Most of that money is not being used. It is just wild. Those $4 billion for community schools, we're getting kids a lot of one-time, important access to foods, important access to medical care, but arts are also important. It helps balance your brain, it helps balance your spirit. And we started by saying, we've got the third highest cause of death in young people being suicide. The arts can be incredibly healing. So how can we as a community rally and make sure that people are getting access to those arts? Because often schools in some of our highest impacted neighborhoods and communities don't have time to fill out these reports, don't have time to fill out these grants. So children in those communities aren't getting access. So I agree that there are not enough arts in those communities, but it is not because there is no funding. The funding is there. We just need to figure out how to lift each other up, to tap into it and get it to the kids who so much deserve it.
Yes, Nicole. Yes, I was about to start clapping right now, snapping. Yes, this is exactly what I was gonna say. I feel like one, it's this narrative, this scarcity narrative. Arts funding is getting cut. There's not enough out here. X, Y, Z. Yes, I feel like the number one barrier for accessibility, one is this cultural narrative. Is one. How do we shift that? What are the strategic approaches? Is it collaboration? Is it working in partnership with the institutions? And that's really what I really want to pull on that string, because when we've K-12 education, every educator on this planet, especially in America, these are the most special people. Your English teacher is special. Those English teachers are special. And to me, it's these are career educators. They may not know how to navigate. They may know how to create a curriculum and a unit plan and a scope of sequence, but they may not know how to navigate going out and finding funding and finding other ways to build their capacity up to innovate what they're doing even more and to connect it back to creativity. I feel like creativity is sometimes, in a K-12 environment is pottery and painting, and not, a pathway for creating a livelihood and doing well and living well. I feel like these are not mutually exclusive things, right? I feel like if there is a blended way for K-12, for the education system, for the grant making, the funding sources, and for the folks like us in the room who are the experts, quite frankly, right? I mean, schools and these educators, career educators, they may not know that people like us are, 1 degree away that can really help them open the aperture. And that's where I feel like there's another opportunity is to consult. And that's the work we do. Is we come in and say, hey, there's an opportunity here, and we can design and dream up something together and go for it. But finding ways to leverage funding and leverage the way I got it right here. I wrote it down. And subvert the standards-based constraints. I think that's the other thing too that holds teachers back from really pushing the envelope. I think they feel hey, I have to teach these standards, which they do, but it's a reframing of the standards and finding ways to shift the narrative and leverage and partnership and collaboration.
Well, and make it interdisciplinary, like we were saying.
The interdisciplinary. So that was good. That was really good, Nicole. That was really good.
I know, right? Snaps. I know. We're going to have a good conversation after this panel, I can tell. So, there are systemic barriers, right? There are historical barriers that exist that create inaccessibility and inequity. However, what I'm hearing from you all is also there's this like collective knowledge, this way that we can share knowledge, resources with each other without gatekeeping or holding the resource here and being afraid of competition, but that we are better together, right? We're just simply better together. And all we really need to try to do is get together and share what resources are out here, the grants. Hey, do you have a grant writer? I need help in applying to this. Do you have extra capacity to help, right? And like sharing that capacity with each other. And so you were already, again, getting into this, but I want to just poke a bit more and just ask, what role can collaboration across schools, community organizations, and cultural institutions play in shaping the future of learning?
I just want to ask you a question.
Yes, let's go.
In how community schools do this. So it's kind of I really don't have another way of describing this, but a long time ago it was this example of how if you put random police officers in a neighborhood, it's not as receptive to a community. If you put police officers that the community know, then there's a relationship already there. There's understanding about how our neighborhood works and things. I see community schools doing this this is the cultural institutions and how it all works together. Is that a good model?
Well, I mean, community is always a good model, right? Like that connection, that like synergy is always great. I think, and I'm going to take us all the way back to like the keynote, like we're just trying to go faster. And like community takes time. Community's slow, right? Like community is like good marinated food. It just needs to like sit and you just need to like be with it, right? And so I think part of the challenge is that like community schools funding, people like race to get the money and then they don't have like the time and capacity to really engage the community. And that's not a criticism. Like I feel it, like my week was so busy this week and my son just turned 12 and it was like all these things happening, right? Like life just happens. But like, how do we create spaces that just take it a little slower so we can build the community? And then how do we just like use hacks to like get the arts plans from La Jolla, from Beverly Hills, from those places that have more resources? And how do we just like, hey, Chat GPT, like copy paste, help me write this for like Barrio Logan, help me write this for these other communities. Because like, come on, like let's leverage what's already being created and like let's lean on each other to do great things and bring arts to young people.
I'll add, I think the future of learning is going to be centered around decentralization. How are we helping to unbundle the role of the educator? How are we helping to give the infrastructure that is the education system, and literally the infrastructure, literally the schools and the maintenance and the tax dollars that go to that? How do we come up with creative ways to offer relief, from the systemic things that are requiring a level of resource and and dollars? And how do we start to look at cultural institutions? How do we start to look at the small business ecosystem? How do we start to look at the nonprofit ecosystem and start to frame and posture those places as places of learning that check the boxes as if the student, the young person was on campus first through sixth period that day? How are we really using the wisdom and gifts of the community of everyday people. Because I think that's the other thing too, and that was really the inspo behind the Guild House. The wisdom and talents that we all in this room have. We are an expert in something, everybody in here, right? How are we creating room and space for us to be great at what we do at first a human level, so we can stay sharp and fulfilled? And then how are we working in collaboration with the institutions, with the system, to allow us to step through those doors without a credential? I think teacher credentialing needs to change, right? I think that there needs to be more thoughtfulness and innovation when it comes to the actual places that things are being learned, like being taught. We've been an org without walls for 8 years, and we've had some great moments in a coffee shop, in a conference room, we've had great moments in someone's garage. These are places of learning. So I think it's really just understanding too that it doesn't just need to rely on a school campus. It doesn't need to rely on that legacy learning center either. It can be and take the shape and form of those unsuspecting places. So I think that's I think an opportunity we have as we think about the future of learning.
Yeah. Hearing decentralizing power and where the work is happening, really leading in our communities, and I'm just whoo, it's some really just great things that you all are sharing. And so we are about to wrap up our panel in a few minutes, but I wanted to just offer a few minutes for each of you for a couple more questions around if you could imagine an ideal learning ecosystem for young people and adult learners alike, what would it look like? Let's do some visioning.
Mine would be a lot more customized or individualized. And so I've seen this done in a school district before, where they really took an account of each of their students, and they did it for years. I think it started early, and really understanding that student. So kind of like a laboratory of self, or for self, their skill sets. What are they just innately great at? And then from what their actual aptitudes are, and they started connecting the dots. And so I've seen it. I know it's possible to do, and then putting them in those those experiences, places, around the folks that they need to. We don't need to be all things, and that's because we're not meant to do life by ourselves. And so if we are just running our race and the things that we're great at, that will then also be the things that we love doing, because we're just wired that way and created that way. That I think it's more so that we're meant to do life together, but also what do we already have? What are those gifts that are innately in us? And then let's put them to work for the greater good.
Envisioning the future of ideal learning. I want to take you to a place that I recently visited, to the jungle of Bali, a small town called Ubud. And in Ubud, there's a school. And a young woman, 17 years old, just completed what they call their green stones, which is a capstone project. For the past 2 years, she's been working with women in the prison system in Indonesia to use creativity and art to help those women send money back to their children in order to feed them while these women are in prison. And that young woman learned entrepreneurship. She learned the artistic path she chose was cross-stitch. So there was cross-stitching. There was figuring out how to sell things and business plans. I mean, I think that is what the future of learning needs to be. It's in service of community with a purpose, including self-expression, and really deeply human-centered with other people. I don't know what this young woman is choosing to do next. Maybe it's higher ed. maybe it's running her business, but I feel like if we can inspire young people to find purpose and to like do something meaningful with other people, then that's education. Like that is why we're here. So that's my dream for the future of education. And yes, modular, and yes, like in chunks, but like with people doing good work.
I'll say, I think my utopian version of learning is just helping people just build the things that they want to see in the world. And there is a whole lot already out there. And with AI coming online, there is the ingredients are there. The pantry is full. And so I believe that if we can equip young people with the confidence and the assuredness that how they see the world matters, that their ideas, have a exponential value, that their voice is worth hearing, that is, I think, the ultimate version of learning, because information is there. All the system structures, methods, models, they're all out there, and people are gifted to offer these things to others. It's just how do we prepare people, young people, to see the world, to claim a vision and a view of the world and share that, and then build something around that, and whatever that might be, And I feel like that to me is the utopian version of learning, and the ideal way that it should work everywhere.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to express some just tremendous gratitude for you all for sharing this morning during this panel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I want to make sure that you get to your next session on time. But just thank you, Nicole, Erin, and Rich, for what you shared, everything from practices to strategy. It might take a bit of time, marinate in community. In creating also spaces of belonging, being mentors to our youth. Thank you just so much. And as we imagine what an ideal learning ecosystem could look like, the challenge and opportunity, I think, for all of us is to build spaces that nurture curiosity, support mental health, and provide equitable access to arts and education in every stage of life. Again, thank you for being here, and stay tuned for Resilience in Fundraising, Navigating Economic Uncertainty, moderated, I see the panelists back there, moderated by the CEO of Art Power Equity, Kamal Martin. So stay tuned, and I wish you all a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Shayla. Great job.